And that is, I know in your capacity as a reporter, as a scholar, and as an advisor, you've had President Obama's ears on what to do with Iran. Could you share with us, if you had 5 minutes of his time again, how would you go about advising him on what to do with Iran today? Karim?
Why don't you go first?
All right.
You're warm.
I think the key point is to continue willingness to engage with the regime on the nuclear issue. I think we need to have arms control experts continuing to work on this problem so that we avoid the kind of fateful decisions that need to be made or might need to be made with respect to the use of military force. I think it is very important for the United States to maintain international support for whatever we do, so that is good. And I think the creativity now needs to come in figuring out how to adopt, let's just call it again, a Helsinki model for Iran. Iran is a country whose future will determine almost all of the issues we talk about in foreign affairs today: drugs, terrorism, proliferation, all the regions we worry about, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iraq, Yemen, all, if you look at a map, right in the middle of all that is Iran. So if there's an analogy to the old Cold War thinking, we need to develop, in the way that we developed in the 60s and the 70s, creative ideas for arms control and similarly supporting the people of the Soviet Union. So I would say, President Obama, continue down your current path, but look for ways to make sure, as Karim has said and others have said, that we remain on the right side of history.
Stay the course, but be creative.
Sure. Status quo plus.
Okay. Christian?
Well, I've never met President Obama. I've never interviewed him. I probably would ask him to go down the road of human rights. I would ask for his views on that. Certainly Shirin Ebadi has said for a long, long time that the American administration has never focused really on the people's rights and on people's human rights. And maybe that would have been a creative way to engage with Iran and show the people, you know, where the United States really stood. Of course, it's only ever been for the last several years on the nuclear issue.
So take your focus off the nuclear issue.
Not off. Did I say that?
No, but I'd like to know. So we would like to talk to Iran about its human rights abuses, which is actually an article that you wrote in Newsweek about a month ago, exactly saying the same thing, and talk about the nuclear issue.
Well, because a lot of Iranians say that when you go to Iran, you actually talk to people and you have the benefit of actually having been there and, you know, seeing the empirical evidence for yourself. When you ask people what they wish, they say they wish that the West would focus more on their rights, on their human rights. When you talk about the most distinguished members of the Iranian community, such as Shirin Ebadi, Nobel Peace Prize winner, you know, she talks about, yes, there has to obviously be a resolution on the nuclear issues and things like that, but that perhaps a way of a more productive engagement and therefore a safer world would be to do some of the, you know, focusing on other issues that never get talked about.
I totally agree with you on that. And Karim, would you like to tell
I
us?
agree with what Christian and Jamie said. I think that this is a conflict which has to be managed. It's not going to be resolved. Or I think we can't reach rapprochement or a modus vivendi with a regime which needs us as an adversary. I think that for the hardliners in power now in Tehran, they believe that enmity towards the United States was a fundamental pillar of the 1979 revolution and it's central to the identity of the Islamic Republic. So I think that it's not going to be resolved. But I'll just repeat what I said earlier, that I think this is an incredibly important time in Iran's history. And we want to look back at this time, I think, for history, for posterity, and say that you know, we did the right thing. We championed the cause of the Iranian people, and that may well be just getting out of their way, or doing no harm, or helping them help themselves. And you asked the question, which I'm very sympathetic to. You know, how can we help them? And so many Iranians I meet throughout the world, in Europe and and Dubai and the US are always asking this question, you know, despite the fact that many of you have been out of the country for 3 decades. Everyone wants to see change, everyone wants to help. And it can be very frustrating from abroad, but I think that you know, what Christiane is doing and shining the light on the plight of people and remaining hopeful and encouraging. And the statements, as Jamie was saying, from President Obama, from Secretary Clinton, making it clear to the Iranians, to the Iranian people that we champion their cause is essential. And I think I would just close by saying that I think there's an Iraq hangover in Washington. In the aftermath of the Iraq War, now everyone wants to be a realist. There's been a lurch from one side to the opposite extreme to say, you know, we want nothing to do with this. We're not in the business of regime change. We're not in the business of helping people who are agitating for change in the Middle East. And I would, if I had President Obama's ear, I would push back in the other direction and say that this I think is going to be, I think the foreign policy of his presidency, Iran is going to play a very prominent role when we look back historically at his foreign policy record. And I think that you know, he certainly has to be on the right side of this history.
With that, we're out of time, and I'm sorry, but if you can come up and thank you.
Well done.